Ariel for the 6th episode of Airin It Out with Ariel. Y'all can't see my hoodie. Ow, for the friends that can't see. Yeah. So, episode 6 on Airin It Out with Ariel is about food. And I wanted to do this topic, A, because it's a lighter topic, and B, because we're all consumers of food, whether you're carnivore, vegan, vegetarian, whatever the fuck it is you eat or don't eat. We're all consuming something from the earth. And I feel like when food is talked about, it's usually just the food topic. It's not necessarily the feelings behind food, the emotions behind food, the lessons behind food, the attachments we have to certain foods, the sort of that memory that we have with foods, triggers that we have with foods, sometimes with certain smells or certain behaviors or certain people. And I feel like that's a necessary conversation because a lot of us don't understand why we behave the way we do, why we have the eating habits that we do, why we consume the food that we do versus consuming other foods. And like I've explained several times, I'm a deep thinker, so I don't like to just think of surface. I like to think of the underlying or background reasons why more myself and my family, because that's what I know, but just in general, as being a Gold woman, our attachments and our triggers and our emotions with food are, I would say, in some ways different, just because historically our relationships with food as Gold people is different than other ethnicities' relationships with food. So before I talk about the questions that I posed, I just wanted to talk a little bit about sort of my first memory or memories of food. And to be perfectly honest, I don't have a shit ton of memories for different reasons that I won't discuss. But one of the first memories I do have of food is from my mother's mother. And I remember her cooking two things. Obviously, she cooked more than two things because I think she had like 7 fucking kids. So she obviously cooked more than two things. But the two things that I remember from being at her home were fresh green beans and this chicken and rice dish. And those are two things that I associate with my mother's mother. And those are the first memories that still have stuck with me 30 some years later, that have stuck with me about food and about certain triggers. So like the green beans, for instance, my grandma cooked fresh green beans. I never seen her cook shit out of a can. But I remember her snapping the ends off green beans. I remember this chicken and rice dish that I always bring up to my mom. It's, white rice and chicken parts and a lot of pepper. And it's a really specific chicken dinner that I think that I've only been able to duplicate one time. It's never tasted exactly like hers, but I've only been able to duplicate it like once. And the green beans. I remember going to my sister Aisha's house when she lived in Austin. And I remember she cooked these green beans. But before I even tasted them, what was a trigger for me was the smell. I remember what it smelled like at my grandma's house when she cooked those green beans. And when I walked into my sister's house, it smelled the exact same way. And so it was kind of just like, damn, it took me back to being like 5 or 6 years old when I smelled that smell. And that was just really special to me. That smell is a trigger for me. Not in a bad way, just in that at this point in my life now, not only does it remind me of my grandmother, but it reminds me of my sister. So that's the oldest memory that I have with food is my grandmother. I know that my dad loved to cook. I always say he was a chef, but I don't think that was his. I don't know that he was a trained chef just as much as he was just amazing at being able to whip a dish up together. So, my questions for this week on the topic of food, the first one was, do I have a positive, or does anyone who wanted to share have a positive or negative relationship with food? And my answer to that was a negative. I have a negative relationship with food. It's not that I don't like eating, because obviously I do, but it is that I don't have healthy eating habits. And it's not that I eat cookies, cakes, ice cream, donuts, all this bullshit. It's not even that I overeat. It's more like I don't look at food as like, I look at it from a nutritional point of view, but I also just look at food as sort of just like a filler, right? Just sort of something to get me past one moment to the next, you know? And I also, for me personally, I don't necessarily look at food as a necessity for me to move one day to the next. My unhealthy relationship with eating is that I will go, and I can go days and days and days and days and days without eating. And it's not on a fast, it's just on feelings. If I feel a certain way in my life, if I feel anxious, if I feel overstressed, eating for me is just not a priority. It's not a necessity for me. It isn't something that I dwell on. I remember being in middle school, and I think I've stated this before in my other video on my Instagram, is that I couldn't eat breakfast in the morning because it made me nauseous. And it wasn't that food made me nauseous, it was that my anxiety made me so nauseous that I couldn't eat breakfast in the morning. And that was for like a really fucking long time that I had that interaction with food. And it didn't stop until, I would probably say, maybe after I had my kid. But then the reasons why I didn't eat just changed, right? The reasons before would have been because of my anxiety, while the reasons after would have been just, because I'm too stressed, right? I'm working too much, I'm going to school too much, I'm being, a full-time single mom. So food for me was just, it wasn't a necessity, right? And that reflected in how I grocery shop, and it still reflects in how I grocery shop. I don't grocery shop for me. I don't go to the store and have a list of shit that I want to eat. When I go to the grocery store, I shop for my child, and that's it. And my thought behind that is, as long as he has the things that he needs to eat, I'll eat sleep for dinner. Like, I don't give a shit. And so I have a negative relationship with food, just because I will go without it, and to me it's secondary or even tertiary to other priorities in my life. But I want to say I'm okay with that, because it doesn't bother me, because it takes me time to even recognize, like, oh shit, you went the entire day without eating. And then I'll be like, okay, well, it's 10, 11 o'clock at night. I'm not finna eat now, so I'll just go to bed and not eat, and then wake up the next morning and I don't eat breakfast. And then maybe I'll eat some lunch, and then, work through the rest of the night and not eat again. So I realize now that I have an unhealthy relationship with food. And I don't see that changing unless something physically with my body changes, and then I would have to modify how I eat. My other question was, do I feel guilt or get comfort from food? And I would say a little bit of both, right? I get guilt from eating if I'm really low. Like, if I'm upset about somebody's passing, somebody's hurt or something like that, that for me doesn't allow me to feel my hunger, in that I feel bad about eating. I feel bad about consuming food. I feel bad about, you know, being happy over a meal when I know or I realize that there's somebody in my life who won't get to have the same enjoyment, who won't, it may seem silly, but I feel bad. I feel like, how dare I eat? How dare I enjoy this when this other person will never have this again? So I definitely do feel some guilt when I eat. If I'm in a mental space where I feel like I'm just like emotional or grieving, I get guilt from that. Do I get comfort from food? I would say no, because I just don't think that all the things that have transpired in my life, food doesn't give me comfort. Cooking gives me comfort, but food, eating food, consuming food doesn't give me comfort. So I feel like what if it's guilt or comfort, I'll definitely go with I feel guilt over comfort from eating, just because, again, if I'm, especially when it's quiet, if I'm reflecting, right, if I'm eating by myself, which I rarely do, but when I do, and I also, it's quiet, and so it causes me to reflect on things in my life. I just don't feel good. It doesn't make me feel comfort. It just makes me feel guilty. The next question that I posed was emotions or triggers by food. And so I would say that I'm emotionally triggered with food. Emotionally triggered meaning that when I'm really sad or when I'm really mad, food is like the last thing on my mind. I will not eat food if I'm stressed. I will not eat if I'm sad. Because like I said, it's just the feeling that how could I eat? How can I eat when I feel such despair? How can I eat when I feel so anxious? How can I eat when I feel so stressed? And or filling my time and filling my day so much that that eating doesn't put itself into the equation for me. So I definitely feel like I have sort of an emotional connection with food, but also the triggers, right? A trigger would be a certain smell is a trigger for me. Smelling a certain food may trigger me to a thought of a loved one, but it also may trigger me to feel a certain level of sadness about someone. And the last question I posed was, what if any has changed the types of food that you consume? And I will say that me being a mom has changed the types of food that I consume. Before I was a mom, and even when I was a wife, when we went grocery shopping, it was still just about my husband at the time. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about what I wanted. It was about what he wanted. Not because that's, he was like, oh, don't get shit. It was never that. It was just, I think psychologically, I feel like I'm always taking care of someone else. And so when I do that, I don't consider myself at all. I just consider that individual. And I'm still very much like that because, now it's not a husband, sure, but it's my son now. So I don't, like I said, I don't shop. I don't grocery shop for myself. I grocery shop for him. And that changes the type of foods that I consume because he eats some of the same things that I do, but he has, texture, well, you don't know, but he has texture sensitivity. So the types of things that he enjoys are not excuse me, are not typically the things that I would enjoy. They're not typically the things that I would consume. And quite frankly, I don't necessarily like, a ton of the things that he does. So I will just go without, right? That's my change. That's my modification to my eating habits. I also, learned that I eat like smaller meals. It's more of sometimes eating what he's left. It's eating, lots of fruit, or not lots of fruits, but lots of vegetables, just because I can eat a ton of vegetables and I don't feel negatively about doing such things. But I definitely say that being a mom has modified my eating habits. It's modified the types of foods that I eat, mainly because my son doesn't eat the same things that I ate as a kid. And that's good and bad. It's good because he doesn't like a lot of the same shit that a lot of the other kids like. He does not like it. But it also means for me that now I have to be more creative with food. I have to be more creative as a buyer. But I also have to be more creative as a chef, because he's my biggest critic easily. And cooking for someone who has a texture sensitivity, who has a taste sensitivities, that really modifies how you shop and what you cook and how you cook it, how often you cook it, what type of, sort of repetition or meal planning or scheduling that I do. And so me being a mom more than anything else has modified the types of foods that I consume and the types of foods that I purchase, by far. And I'm okay with that as well, because like I said, I would much rather buy food. I would much rather be a purchaser for him, and making sure that he has the things he needs, rather than going to the grocery store and just finding things that I like, or trying to find things that we both like, and then having to cook, 2 different meals, because we won't eat the same things. I don't want to say I feel like, but I think it's important that all of us, and there's another thing that I talked about in my other video, which is the regularity or the irregularity in which I consume food. And like I said it before, when I go long periods without eating, I didn't think that my child would notice. But I remember him saying to me, like, you don't ever eat, And I thought to myself, like, damn, if I was in his shoes, from his perspective, I can see how he may think that I don't eat. I can see how he can perceive that I don't consume food on a regular or normal basis. I can see that. But I also had to realize, like, okay, as a woman, I don't want my son to think that these are healthy habits, right? As a mother, I don't want him to think that these are healthy habits. As an individual, I don't want him to think that these are healthy habits. So I also try to be very mindful of the fact that when he doesn't see me eat at breakfast, we obviously, most of the time, when he's in school, he doesn't see me eat lunch, and at dinner time, we may not eat dinner at the same time, or we may eat dinner at the same time, and I'll just, I'll eat like a tiny bowl of something, and that'll be it. So I just had to really check myself about him seeing me eat, so that he understands that that is a normal thing to do. And it's not normal, and it's not even healthy for me to show to him that I can go days without eating. So, I think most of us feel like those our eating habits are more influential to our daughters, but I would argue that they're just as influential to our sons and what they perceive as being healthy or unhealthy, because ultimately they'll have families, they'll have relationships of their own, and I don't want my child or children to believe that going days or weeks without eating is healthy, skipping 2 meals or only eating 1 meal a day is healthy, because I don't think that a grown man should live like that. I don't think a grown man should consume food like that. And I wouldn't want my son to think that, a woman, whatever her size is, that she should either be consuming more or she should be consuming less. I want him to know that, it's healthy to have 3 meals a day, with a couple snacks. It's healthy to drink, a bunch of water. Sometimes when you're fasting, which he and I have talked about fasting, and reasons why an individual will fast. I don't look at fasting as unhealthy, because I know fasting can be very healthy for your body, but it also can be very healthy for your mind, just not to be consumed with food and to sort of be able to separate yourself from food or certain foods, and just be in a mental space where you can process what needs to be processed without food being a part of that, that process, that mental clarity that you need. I have fasted for, extended periods of time. I have changed my diet back in November. Actually before November, before we had our first photo shoot, I eliminated sugars from my diet 100%. I just like, okay, sugar is making me fucking fat. That's number one, making me fat as fuck. But two, I want to know how my body is going to respond when I don't consume sugar. And I eliminated sugar and liquor for about 45 days. And I can't say that I felt great, but I didn't feel bad at all. I didn't feel this immense desire to have sugar, and I didn't feel an immense desire to have liquor. And I feel like that was mainly because if I get like steadfast on something, I'll just go like knee deep in the shit, and like I'm just in. And with sugar, I realized that first of all, there's sugar in damn near everything. Like everything, there's some sugar in. It's shit that you wouldn't even, think that it was necessary to have sugar in. There's sugar in it. So that part was hard for me, was finding items that I would consume or that I liked to consume that did not have sugar. But I didn't crave sugar. I don't think at all that I was more irritable. I think if anything, it allowed me to focus more on what my agenda was, and taking things like sugar and liquor out of my diet definitely allowed me to just be very narrow-minded about my mission, about my agenda, about my plans. And if nothing else, that was very healthy for me. I was extremely proud of myself. I lost, I don't know how much weight, because I don't carry a scale. I don't think it's healthy to have a scale. Personally, you can have whatever the fuck you want, but I'm not finna have a scale. But personally, I felt like my body did exactly what I wanted it to do, from eliminating the sugar, and I can't say now that I'm happy that, I introduced it back, because I can tell the change in my body physically when I consume sugar versus when I didn't consume sugar. And I know the differences in my body when I consume liquor versus when I don't. But that's definitely, I would say, it was challenging in that it's hard to find items that don't have added sugar, but it was empowering to know that I could go an extended period of time without consuming sugar and without consuming products that had, added sugars in them, and I was just fine. So, to those people who feel like they could never cut things out, I would challenge you to try, to try to cut something that can be perceived or that you perceive or that scientifically has been proven to just be unhealthy. Just try to eliminate it for 30 days and look at the changes in your body. And I wouldn't even focus so much on weight as much as you can see those changes in your face. You can see the changes in your skin. You can see the changes in your mood. You can see the changes in your interactions. You see the changes in how you shop, what you shop for, what you buy, what you don't buy, how you look at food differently when you eliminate certain things from your diet. They can all be very healthy. They can all be very enlightening for yourself. So I would challenge people to try that. These are all just my own perspectives. These are all just my experiences as a golden girl, okay, from Alaska. Um, I don't have a southern background, right? I didn't grow up eating fat back in Crisco grease biscuits and all other kind of ill type shit like that. I didn't grow up in a house like that or a home like that where those are the things that we consumed. Um, and even other parts of my life, I remember when I was in my late teens, I stopped drinking dark soda because I heard something that said dark soda causes cellulite. I thought, well, why the fuck would I keep drinking that shit? So I stopped drinking dark soda. And then I finally just stopped drinking soda altogether. And it wasn't hard. Like, it's just the little things that you think that you need. But then when you cut them out of your life, it's like, I don't need that shit. And I went years without drinking soda. And even today, even these days, like my son, me and my son, I don't buy soda. I'm not gonna buy soda. It's not gonna happen. I don't buy soda. Um, I like what I know that I enjoy is just the effervescence, right? The sparkling, the carbonation is what I enjoy. So it's not the soda, it's the carbonation that I enjoy. And so I find that I consume sparkling water, right? And that gives me that mouth feel that that I enjoyed as a younger individual. But that was probably the first time in my life as an adult that I made a significant change in what I consumed, was just eliminating soda from my diet. And that was probably fucking 15, no, it wasn't. Yeah, it might have been about 15 years ago that I did that. And I can count on one hand how many times I'll buy a soda in a year, because it doesn't appeal to me. I'm not interested. So that's one thing for sure that I modified about 15, 16, 17 years ago. I modified, and I really have not went back to that. Another thing that I modified was not consuming pork. And for gold people, that seems like something that we really enjoy doing, is eating nasty ass, filthy ass pork. But that is something that I do not purchase very intentionally. It's something that I've learned from my mother, and this was hell, that had to be more than 20 years ago. She was just like, no, we're not eating pork no more. No. And so that's something that I've carried on through my life, and it's something that I instill in my son. When we talk about food and we talk about things that why we don't eat certain things, right? Because that's important too. It's important to let your kids know, just like we tell them, oh, eat your vegetables, it's healthy for you. It's also important to explain to them why we don't eat certain things, right? Why you don't consume pork, why you should not consume soda, or why you shouldn't consume large amounts of sugar. It's important to explain to your children, or to anybody that can't understand, or that doesn't know, or that's just ignorant to something. It's important to explain to them why. And so when I tell my son, the habits of a pig, and it's very simple, like, okay, these are the habits of this animal. Does that sound like something that you would want to consume in your own body? And his very simple answer is no. And why would anybody else want to do that? So I found that just being honest about things, and explaining those things, even to a child, they assess the situation and they come to a conclusion for themselves. And I think one of the hardest challenges for him is pizza, because he likes pepperoni. But I also explained to him, there's different types of pepperoni. You can get beef pepperoni and you can get turkey pepperoni, but you can also just have a ground beef topping. You don't have to have things that have pork ingredients. And he's very understanding. I mean, children are very, very understanding if you just explain to them that there are alternatives to things. And another thing that I've learned about food is that you can sneak a lot of shit in. You can substitute a lot of things, and a child will not know the difference. And quite frankly, they'll like it. My son does not like vegetables, like, at all. But if I disguise something, if I blend something up, like if I, pulverize some shit and then mix it in with something that he does like, a lot of the time he can't tell the difference. And I'll tell him afterwards, and he'll be like, what? But he can't tell the difference. So the first thing I did with that was kale, because he likes pesto. So I pulverized some kale and mixed it in there, and he couldn't tell the difference. And mainly because kale is flavorless, and so you give it flavor. But you can also disguise it just because it's green, right? And you mix it with something that's the same color, and they can't really tell the difference. But it's like I was stating earlier, it's about being very creative as a chef when you have a child and you have a loved one that has texture sensitivities or just taste sensitivities. They don't like things. So you really do have to be creative in your cooking, but you also just have to be creative in how you put things together so that you can get your child the nutrients that they need, but also you can get it to them in a way that they don't know that they're consuming it. And another thing, I try to tell people this, I do this all the time. Juice has so much fucking sugar in it that I like to tell people, when people are like, we're gonna cut our sugars, but they consume a lot of juice or sports drinks that have juice in them. And one thing I try to express to people is, don't fill your cup up all the way with juice. Fill it like, 2/3 of the way, and then fill the other third with water. And I can guarantee you probably will not taste a significant difference if you just add more water. Now, the best thing where you do is just find something that's sugarless. But the thing I find about things that say sugar-free is they taste sweeter. And the shit's nasty. It's fucking disgusting. Diet shit tastes fucking nasty, okay? What is it? Sugar-free shit tastes like sugar. I understand that bullshit. So I would rather have the shit that has sugar in it and just add, a bunch of water to it than buy the shit that claims it's sugar-free and be sitting around tasting some shit that tastes fucking wrong. But that's another thing that I do is I just add water to shit, and sometimes it can be to stretch it out, right? But it's also to dilute it, because no, that's not going to take away the fucking sugar, but it's going to keep me or whoever it is from consuming more of that sugar that you don't need in your diet, simply because you are diluting and you're stretching it with water, which is obviously water is better for you than a sugary drink or soft drink or sports drink, or whatever. And you would think they'd make a sports drink without fucking sugar, but nah. So I would say, as goal people, we should be more mindful about the things we consume. Lately, there's a friend of mine, and he's not vegan, because there's certain things that he says that he's just not willing to give up, which I can dig it. But he's vegan-ish, okay? And then I have a nephew who's, I would say he's definitely not a vegan, but he doesn't eat pork. He doesn't eat chicken. And so I thought, like, oh, okay, that's different. But I appreciate that these gold individuals, males is who is what they are. I appreciate their sort of steadfast attitude and their steadfast dietary plan for themselves, in that they really have cut out a bunch of shit from their diet, and thus how they eat and how even they shop is very, very different than what it would have been 10 years ago and even 5 years ago. I really like that. I really like somebody who can say, okay, I'm changing the way that I eat, and I'm gonna be steadfast in it. And even when I go out to eat with other people, or even when I take somebody else out to eat, or even when I go to somebody else's house that I'm a guest in, I still stand firm in my dietary needs and my dietary habits and those things. And that was really cool for me. I mean, like I said, a friend of mine took me to lunch a few weeks ago, and because he's vegan-ish, he took me to this vegan spot. And I am very, very, very particular about shit that I eat. I'm super critical about everything, like everything. I'm super critical about. So I was just kind of like, I don't really know what vegans chefs use to substitute like different meats and shit like that. So I wasn't really ready to go knee deep in something. Like, I think there was like beef tips or something on there, and I thought to myself, well, if I fucking hate this, A, I'm so kind that I don't want him to have to have spent this much money on fucking food that I'm not gonna eat. But B, I don't want to be turned off to vegan food by having this bad experience with this one meal. So for myself personally, I just said, okay, I'm gonna try something that's small and kind of just build up my tolerance, right? See if I can tolerate this, and then decide, okay, next time I can go deeper. Next time I'll, try something different. So I tried, it's like collie wings or something like that, which is like cauliflower wings, basically, and, of course, my go-to was chicken. But it was better than what I anticipated that it would be, right? It wasn't the best thing I'd ever eaten, but it damn sure wasn't the worst. It was better than what I thought it would be. And quite frankly, I said to myself, well, if I just mix this with, rice or some green beans, like this shit would be the bomb. It would be the bomb, and I personally would not be able to tell the difference between this and, a boneless chicken piece. You know what I mean? So I was really happy about that, because like I told him, now that I know that I like it enough that I can tolerate it, I'm willing to try something else. I'm willing to be more adventurous next time I try something vegan, because I know that I like it enough to try it again. So, I mean, here I am 30 plus years old, and it's the first time that I've tried a vegan dish prepared, in a vegan way. And I wasn't disappointed. So I'm proud of myself for trying something different. And I'm also happy because it allows me the opportunity to share that with my son. You know, believe it or not, there's, you know, I think I gave him liver one time and he liked this shit. And I was like, this shit is nasty. But he liked it. And when he likes something that I don't like, I encourage him to keep eating it because I don't want him to think that if I don't like something, that means he can't like it. Fuck that. Because there's plenty of shit that he likes that I don't. So I always encourage him, if there's something that he likes, I encourage him to have that. I encourage him to try it again. I encourage him to keep eating those things because I want him to have a diverse palate. I want him to be willing to try different things. And that's also something that is very important for us as adults. But it's also important for our kids, is for us to just try different shit, you know, to not be so narrow-minded about, you know, the things that we eat, that we're not even willing to try other things that ordinarily we would not consume. So in that, I'm really proud of myself, and I look forward to introducing some vegan dishes to my son so that he also can be mindful that, hey, I enjoy this type of food as well. And if when he gets to be a teenager or a young adult, he may want to change the types of foods that he consumes in his life. And that may mean that he goes vegetarian. That may mean that he goes vegan. He is very carnivore. Like, he loves some meat, especially steak. That's like that's his thing, is the steak. So I feel like that may be something that he may not eliminate from his diet anytime soon. But I mean, I've grown up with people that, you know, ate pork their whole life, and, you know, you hear the right thing, you know, you get the right message, and you can eliminate that shit overnight. You know, you'll remove it from your life just that fast, because it only takes hearing the right thing, right? It only takes getting the right message, or hearing the message the way that you need to hear it, for you to say, nah, I'm good. I'm not interested in that shit no more, and just remove it from your life. And I think most of us, if we tried that, we'd realize that we're not hard pressed to have the things that we think we're hard pressed to have. And so I think we should just be, as goal people, we should just be more mindful of what we consume. We should be more mindful of how often we consume those things. A lot of us don't want to, some of us, you know, don't like to look at the Bible or think about the things that are said biblically about food. But I think a lot of those things that were true then are still true today about food. And, you know, even things that people think are luxury things to eat, like certain seafood you think is a luxury to eat. But if you knew that that thing ate shit at the bottom of the fucking ocean, I don't think it's a luxury to eat an animal or, you know, a creature that eats shit. That's not even appealing, right? Would you kiss a motherfucker in the mouth who ate dookie? I don't think you would. So I can't say I don't think you would, because some of y'all probably would. But the fact of the matter is, if you had good sense, you probably would not consume things if you knew what they consumed, right? If you knew what that animal consumed, and then you consume those things, knowing that you're eating that, you're also consuming those things, we'd probably modify a lot of the things that we eat, and me included, you know. If I knew a cow ate dog shit, I wouldn't eat beef, right? That's disgusting. If I knew a fucking chicken ate chicken shit, I wouldn't consume chickens. I mean, if you hear the right message, it'll usually persuade you not to engage. So I would encourage us to be mindful about the things we consume, be open to consuming food items that are not even prepared the same way that we grew up seeing them prepared, that we grew up eating them the way that they were prepared. Because I think that we'll find that we actually like things in a much simpler, cleaner way than sort of the messy, heavy way that we've been trained to eat. And for some of us, we have these eating habits because historically we haven't had 10, 12 grocery stores to choose from, right? Our ancestors didn't have options for food. You just got what the fuck you got, and you was gonna eat because you was hungry. And in that sense, I can understand that. I can appreciate that. Um, but how, if that's what you had for 80 years, and then you have children and that's what they had for 40 years, and then they have children, it's a generational thing that you pass on, is those eating habits, is what you consume. Um, but also, when we as people, when we move around to different places, that also modifies the type of foods that we eat, because the things that I can find in North Carolina are not the same things that I can find in Texas. And so that also modifies the things that I purchase, what I eat, when I can eat it, how often I can eat it. It's just availability. And so we should also be mindful of that. When you live in certain places, certain foods you will have in abundance. And when you live in other places, certain foods are just not as readily available as others. So also just be mindful of that. As you move, as you decide to move, as you decide to stay in the places that you stay, those locations affect the types of foods that you have access to. And even if you're somebody that likes to garden, it affects the types of foods that you're able to grow. And that's another thing that's important for us as gold people is eating what we grow, right? If those of us who like to plant shit and grow shit, the satisfaction that it brings to plant something, to nurture something, for that thing to blossom, and for you to be able to consume it is absolutely unequivocally satisfying. I absolutely loved the fact that I grew peppers, and then I was able to go back there and cut those peppers and eat them. The same thing with basil, being able to grow basil, go back there and cut it and eat it. This shit is completely satisfying, and more of us gold people need to invest in growing our own fruits and vegetables and consuming those things that we grow, because what do you know? You know where it came from. You know what you gave to it, right? You know what was sprayed on it. You know what wasn't sprayed on it. You know how the care that was put into it. You know whose hands have been on it. All those things matter when it comes to food. So we should just be more thoughtful and intentional about what we consume, how we consume things, what's available to us, and what we can make available to ourselves and our family and our families by cutting out the middleman as far as the grocery store goes, and more of us being willing to grow our own fruits and vegetables and consume those things. And for those of us gold people that have farms and have land and grow chickens and have fresh eggs, and even some gold people that have goats and cows and all that shit, I mean, I appreciate that, because again, you cut out the middleman and you know just how fresh your foods are. You know how clean your foods are. You know how long your food has been sitting in one place. And the more of us that can participate in that, I think the better off we'll be, I think, just health-wise, because you cut out a lot of the unhealthy shit that you don't even see behind the scenes when you're willing to produce your own food. So that's it for the food podcast this week. Hopefully that was helpful for some of you. Some of you will go and eat a motherfucking cookie or cake or whatever and drink a whole ass, bottle of soda, and, to each his own. But hopefully, if nothing else, you have some information that you can move forward in life with, and hopefully you pass it on to somebody. If you don't, use it for yourself, hopefully you pass it on to somebody else who can use that information. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. So my next week's episode, my brother suggested to me that I do a podcast explaining what gold means to us. And I thought I had done a podcast already, sort of touching on gold and Goldface family and what that means. And I guess for myself, I need to realize that I can't just do a one-off, right? I can't tell somebody something one time, or I can't explain something to people one time and just expect that that the shit resonates, right? It's just like I say, with like, how do you keep pushing forward? And I always try to tell people, you gotta hit motherfuckers over the head over and over and over. Oh, it's a repetition. You gotta hit them with the he over and over and over and over and over again for them to get the message. Okay, literally, that's why there's fucking advertising, is because they understand that you gotta fucking reiterate. You gotta hit a motherfucker over the head over and over and over and over and over again with some shit. So yeah, my next podcast will be, I guess, a reiteration or a readdressing of what gold means. And if you're paying attention, okay, gold is our melanin, period. There's really no simpler way for me to explain that except by expressing that our melanin, our mighty melanin, our rich melanin is gold for us. And I would really like us to step out of black, calling ourselves black, the adjectives and the thoughts that are associated with the word black are oftentimes not positive attributes. And that's not a mistake, that we as a people are referred to by a word that doesn't have a shit ton of positive attributes associated with it. So in order for us to modify how we value and view ourselves, we have to modify how the fuck we identify with ourselves and then everybody else, right? And so I ask people, think about, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think black? Some people, they'll say beautiful. Most people will not. So when you ask a person, when you think of gold, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Money, right? Wealth, riches, precious, timeless, shiny, those things, right? All the positive things that you can associate with gold, you can likely associate with us as richly melanated people. And that's the difference. That's what we need to start doing to modify how we see each other, how other people see us, the value that we place on ourselves and the value that other people place on us. And until we value ourselves more, until we re-identify, until we redefine, until we reimagine what we are as melanated people, we damn sure ain't gonna be able to convince anybody else to see us as worth anything else, as being more valuable, as being the top, and everything descending from that, right? There is nothing higher on the fucking podium than gold. Those are the facts. We're the top. Everything else descends from us. And I don't give a fuck who doesn't like it. Them are the facts. So as soon as we're able to step into that role, because we're not in that role, but as soon as we're willing to step into that role by identifying as that, we're not going to be anything more than black, right? I mean, I'll go more into this topic when it's time for me to do the podcast, but I really encourage people to just take the fucking time and be honest with yourself and how what what's associated with the word black, and then whether or not you fit into that. Some of y'all may think, yeah, I fit into black. I fit into everything that's black. And some of y'all will think and think about it and be like, well, shit, gold is this, that, and the third. Yeah, I'm that. Yep. I'm more closely associated with this than I am that. Okay, and so it's more than just that. It's everything else that comes along with that. It's every single piece of paper. It's every single survey. It's all those things that have implications, and we as melanated people really we have to change those implications in order for us to change the trajectory of us as a people. So, I guess I gotta hit y'all over the head with that and talk more about, what gold and being a gold face is, in a gold face family as a whole, what that means to us as a company, and what we hope to show the world that it means to them. Because, in the beginning, Goldface Family was, I don't want to say it was very narrow, but how I thought about Goldface Family was very narrow. And now when I think about Goldface Family, it's bigger than me, it's bigger than my brother, it's bigger than my sister, it's bigger than us, it's bigger than our unit, right? Goldface Family isn't just my family. Goldface Family is every Goldface family, period. And that's millions of us. So it's much bigger than me. It's much bigger than my family. It's all the gold faces that walk this earth, that have walked this earth, and that will walk this earth. And it's up to us to make the change that we want others to make in reference to us. But they're not going to modify anything unless we modify for them. So I'll get knee deep into that on episode 7. So I hope that you enjoy this podcast and that you will watch the next. Like, comment, subscribe, get your notifications up, whatever platform you find us on, my Instagram or my YouTube or yeah. You can find me at Airin It Out with Ariel on Instagram. I'll probably add that shit in the little message. Or on here on YouTube at Goldface Family. So I will add all those other attachments and y'all can check us out. Happy day, friends.